Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of, we're just going to call this Top 10. All right, today we've got in the co-captains chairs today, we've got Steve Keeler from Rock Fantasy, Middletown, New York. We've got Rich Catino from Metal Asylum and Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, and the guy who's wearing the shirt that's least appropriate for today's show.
I thought this was a hair metal show. What happened? I was misled.
Today is all about thrash, right? So I have tasked the three of us with picking out our favorite, most essential thrash albums of all time. The one caveat I gave all of us is that no more than 2 albums from one band can be in the top 10. And I asked everybody to put together an honorable mentions list. So, as you can imagine, this was pretty hard to do because you've got some absolutely killer bands that kind of fall into this genre and lots of classic albums, in many cases, many classic albums by a single band. So as we were talking about before we went on the air, you could easily in a top 10 best thrash albums have like all top 10 Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and maybe, Anthrax or Testament. It's very easy to do that. We didn't want to do that. And there's a perfect example of all the great bands that have kind of, done this sort of thing over the years. So many to choose from.
Yeah, the choices just from the 80s alone. That's all the 80s.
Yeah. Well, you got like a 3-4 year period where you had some landmark albums coming out.
Right.
Landmark albums coming out.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off with our number 10. I'm going to have start with Steve, then Rich, then myself, and we'll keep going around till we get to our number ones.
I changed my number 10 3 times this morning. First it was Sepultura, Beneath the Remains, and it was Voivod, Killing Technology, and I said, you know what, I got to put Metallica, Ride the Lightning on. That's from the power of Fight Fire with Fire and Trapped Under Ice and Creeping Death, and yeah, he's got the props. I'm in my record shop here in Middletown, New York, but I didn't dig props out, so we may have some of these albums on the shelves, and I'm away from my home collection. I figured I'd come film in the store this morning, so get out of the house for a little bit. So yeah, Metallica, Ride the Lightning is my number 10.
Got to be, right? All right, Rich, back to you.
All right, I'm going with the Germans. I'm gonna go with Sodom's Agent Orange for their 10, my 10. So this is their third one. Came out in 1989. This is really cool. This is definitely, I think it's still their best album, and they've put out 16 by this year. Genesis, I don't know what the number is here. 21, I think, is the new album. So yeah, they put out 16 albums over the years, but this is really great. It's got Agent Orange, Tired and Red, Remember the Fallen, which is a little slower, Magic Dragon, Outskabam. I don't know how you pronounce that. So this has a lot of hits that they still play to this day. I love the artwork too, the front and back, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that artwork on that cover in front and back.
Yeah, so cool. So thrash, right?
Yep.
But this is a cool album because this is when they got a really nice polished sound. First 2 are kind of rough, especially Obsessed by Cruelty. That's really a rough album. It's almost like early black metal. But Agent Orange, they really got it right. Nice balance of a little bit of melody going on with the tight riffing and everything. It's cool. It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, I got one here that I bet you neither one of you would expect. I love this album. I always love this band. Toxic World Circus.
Very nice.
Cool.
Local Hudson Valley guys, right?
Yeah.
This album came out in 87. I remember being in college at SUNY New Paltz and hearing, a bunch of people that I knew in Pi Alpha Nu fraternity knew these guys and turned me onto this album. I was like, holy cow, they got signed to Roadrunner Records, really cool. It's just this rampaging album of thrash and speed metal, blazing riffs and solos all over the place. In fact, some of it's really technical, almost close to early prog metal. You got the high-pitched vocals of Mike Sanders. I mean, he had this like shrieking voice, Heart Attack Voices, Door to Hell, the title track, World Circus. Amazing band. Unfortunately, they would only release like 2 albums and then just like disappear off the face of the earth. But I always really dug this a lot. And how about that album cover, right? World Circus, very applicable to what's going on today. If you kind of read the lyrics of this album, crazy, right?
I thought they were reactivated.
They are, they're back apparently, but they haven't released anything yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to catch them at the Civic Center a couple of years ago. They were part of the NYDM, the New York Death Metal party. Toxic was there.
Really? Wow.
I believe so. Maybe my memory is I dreamt it, but Toxic did play a couple of gigs. They played at backyard. They played at Brian's backyard barbecue once too, I think, didn't they? On that.
Really?
Maybe
could
I'm
be.
wrong. Comment down if you think I'm getting senile, but it's possible.
Anyway, a great band though. Really cool band. All right, Steve, back to you.
I'm going with another local band from New Jersey, Overkill. And I could have picked 3 or 4 albums from them, but I went with the first one, Feel the Fire. I really was leaning on Taking Over earlier today, but I'm going to go with Feel the Fire. And of course, Rotten to the Core, Hammerhead, Blood and Iron, just a great early metal, thrash metal album. And there, he has the prop. Thank you very much. Even an autograph.
Well, I'll keep on going back to my thrash crate that I got. Great cover, by the way, too.
Yeah. I still remember when that album came out, man. That's like so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Great band. I always thought one of those bands that, like, you always talk about the big 4 of thrash. Man, Overkill were like right there. I always thought like Overkill and Testament were like right there.
And Exodus, yeah, those 3.
Yeah. All right, my next one, and Rich, I think Rich has the prop for my next one. Gonna go to Germany. Creator's Pleasure to Kill from 1986.
Yep, I got that here.
I mean, they're my favorite German thrash band. There's a lot of good ones, but that is such a great album. It's their second album. Furious, almost black metal style riffing and vocals on this album. In fact, a lot of people, when you look back at the history of Creator, they look at their first couple albums as, very much in that kind of like early black metal style. But of course, thrash early on was like taking all sorts of different forms and whatnot. You had the Eastern European sound, you had the Bay Area sound and all that kind of stuff. A lot of technical guitars. The drums are absolutely relentless. Ripping Corpse, killer song. Ride of Violence, Death is Your Savior is amazing. The title track, at the time, I remember when those first couple Creator albums came out, my first thought was like, my God, this is so brutal. A lot of these thrash bands, the non-US bands were coming out with some, Destruction as well, Sodom as well, some really, really heavy albums that at the time was probably unlike anything we had heard, say for like maybe like Venom and, or the early Slayer and stuff, but just such a great album.
First Exodus.
Yeah, the first Exodus, Bonded by Blood as well. Yep, absolutely.
They got those harsher vocals, right?
Yeah. All right, next up.
All right, me, right?
Did I go out of turn? I went out of turn. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sorry.
I think I'm right. 3 of us, not like Monday nights with 9, where I'm confused already.
It's early. All right. So I skipped you, Rich. I'm sorry. You're number 9.
Cool.
Sorry.
It's all good. So I'm going with the other German band, Destruction. This is their first one. This is awesome. I love Infernal Overkill. And great artwork again. I mean, these bands, could they have cooler artwork?
Yeah.
Almost everybody had cool album covers, even if they were simplistic. Like the first Possessed, like 7 Churches.
Yes.
Even in the simplicity of it, it still looked incredible. So this one's got a bunch of classics: Invincible Force, Death Trap, Tormentor, Bestial Invasion, Thrash Attack, Antichrist, Black Death. This is just loaded with classics that they play to this day.
Yeah. I mean, those first 2 albums were so good.
Yeah, but I put them at the bottom, with Sodom, because the vocals were rough. They didn't have their polish and their elements of melody quite yet. A little bit here and there, but not quite yet. So that's why they're towards the bottom, but still no less important as everybody else, right?
I agree.
I
remember I bought all these albums we're talking about. I bought at Rock Fantasy.
Yeah,
You did. Wow, that means I'm really old.
We both are, man.
I'm matching Rich, and my number 8 is Destruction, Infernal Overkill, and I guess you got the props still ready, and everything he said I agree on, so makes it pretty easy. And I'd say that the German end of the thrash movement back then, other than maybe Slayer in the States, was much more of an evil feel than, let's say, Anthrax and Metallica and some of the other bands, where they were more like, it was kind of like a form almost of black metal with the lyrical content and stuff. It was more like satanic and, Creator and stuff. So
even the artwork, like look at the cover for Release from Agony.
Yeah.
Great album.
Yeah, another great one.
I love the album that came out after Infernal Overkill's artwork with like the tornado with the smear and everything.
Crack Brain.
No, Eternal Devastation, wasn't it?
Oh, that one. Okay. Yes, you're right.
That's got a great album cover on it.
Yeah. I don't think I have that. No, I don't have that one here. I do have the Butcher though. That's another great one.
Oh, what a
The
classic!
Mad Butcher?
Yeah, another classic. You know
Love
what?
that album.
One that came out in recently in the last 10 years or so, they did that Thrash Anthems where they re-recorded a lot of stuff, and I really dug that record.
Oh yeah.
For a lot of purists are like, "Oh, Keeler, you're a poser," you know. It's not the original, and it's not as raw, and you know. But I really love Thrash Anthems. I play it a lot still to this day.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a much needed upgrade, I think.
Yeah. And the other one that Rich held up, I remember buying that from you, Steve, back in the 80s, and it was white vinyl.
Oh,
If you remember, I don't know. I mean, we're going back a million years here.
I
But,
don't remember exactly what color.
yeah,
it
I'd be
was,
curious,
but
Rich, to see which one you have.
The Release from Agony one?
Yeah,
Let me see.
mine was white vinyl.
Maybe it's yours.
Oh yeah.
Rich
Look
snuck in
at
and got it.
Wow.
Pete, do you still have your old vinyl from back then, or did you totally switch over?
I totally switched over. I sold them all like in the early 90s.
So Rich probably bought that one from
Yeah,
you.
he probably showed up at my garage sale or yard sale.
Oh, you
I'm so glad.
sold them at
I
a
kept-
garage sale. Oh my God.
Yeah, some woman showed up and offered me a couple $100 for all my vinyl, and at the time I
Wow.
didn't care because vinyl was dead and CDs were all the rage,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
took them all off my hands to get to her son.
I mean, look at me, but look at behind me with my vinyl racks. We had vinyl racks we took to the dump years ago because we thought it was a totally dead form. We weren't really selling it in the store. And just look back at the money that you sold at the garage sale.
Yeah,
You're probably sick when you think about it.
I try not to think about it. Yeah,
I don't think.
Well, hopefully nobody knows where I live. I'm gonna have to keep these things under lock and key now, right? Put them in
You
a
live in
vault
Norway,
somewhere.
right?
yeah.
He's
Yeah, Rich is in Norway. There you go. All right, let's get back on track here. So, Rich, go again with your number 8, and then we'll get back in the correct order here.
All right, going with the other the third of the big three, Creator, same one you just mentioned, Pleasure to Kill. Definite classic.
Again, another great album cover.
This was their second one, though. This was their second one.
Yep.
So it's a little bit better than the first one. What's the first one called again?
Endless Pain.
Yeah.
Endless Pain. Yes. That was really rough. This starts getting a little better. And then with the next one, too, Extreme Aggression, that even gets a little more polished, too. That's a great album as well.
Yeah, they were in my record shop for Extreme Aggression. They did the Rock Palace here in Middletown on that tour with Coroner.
Nice. This is the special edition one that they reissued with the bonus disc on it, with the live stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, since you mentioned Pleasure to Kill, I could throw in Extreme Aggression for my choice.
Okay, cool.
All right. So my number 8, Rich, I'll need your prop here. So I'm going to go with a kick-ass US band that again, another one of those albums, and this came out in 1986 that was just so freaking heavy. And again, another album that I bought at Rock Fantasy back in 86, Dark Angel, Darkness Descends. I mean, how kick-ass is that album?
Yeah,
Just,
very cool.
pulverizing freaking kick to the teeth. So heavy, so fast and furious. I mean, that introduced to the world a guy named Gene Hoglan, who's drumming on that album is off the charts. You got the dual guitars of Eric Mayer and Jim Durkin. The only thing I don't really love about that album is I think Don Dottie's vocals are a little weird, and he wasn't in the band for that long, but they kind of fit the music. But man, so many great songs. Perish in Flames, Merciless Death, The Burning of Sodom, kick-ass song. Just a really, really punishing, heavy album. And I think one of those albums that is like a long lost thrash classic that not enough people talk about today. Maybe because the band, kind of a lot of stops and starts throughout their career, I guess,
Yeah.
It's very underground. The real connoisseurs, but it's definitely not. You don't hear in the mainstream as much about it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it's probably because their career didn't last as long as a lot of the bands that we've already mentioned that are still going, like Destruction and Creator and Exodus and everybody else.
And out of the American bands too, they had one of the harsher vocal as well, kind of like Old Slayer and Exodus, but even more I think, harsh, I think, than those bands.
More metal.
They're definitely very extreme.
If you can be more metal.
All right, Steve, back to you.
I am up to number 7, correct?
Yep.
I'm going with, from here on in, I'd say almost, I mean, some of these you could switch around day by day, like we always say in our list. I'm going with Exodus, Bonded by Blood. The self-titled album with a lesson in violence, Piranha. It just doesn't, you know, the self-titled track. What a great album by Exodus. And that's my favorite Exodus album. I mean, maybe some people talk about the production and everything, but I just love those songs.
Can't argue that. It's a legendary album for a reason.
I don't have my prop for that either.
Oh yeah, I might as well put mine up because I'm going to piggyback you because that was going to be my next choice as well. So
Me and you are connected, man.
yeah, it's a total classic. Total. Even though the vocals are not perfect and the production's not perfect, but the songs are still fast and heavy, but they still change up the tempos here and there, and it's still catchy as well in the hooks.
We'll teach you a lesson in violence.
And then you got Piranha and Deliver Us to Evil and the song Exodus, and Then There Were None. Very cool stuff.
Such a great album, man.
Yeah, just the self-titled track alone opening up the album is so killer.
It's very good.
One of the best thrash album covers, I think, too.
I mean, that is a crazy cover, right? Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's kind of like Born Again. It's got metal babies on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where Tony got the idea? It's like, Exodus has got some metal babies. We'll have to redo it in Born Again.
Well, this is the combat one too, so this is definitely worth something.
Yeah. I had that one originally back in the day.
So did I.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a little Martin Popo thing and be a little contrarian here. So although I think Bonded by Blood is the more iconic album, I'm actually going to go as my favorite Exodus album, Fabulous Disaster, from a couple years later.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I've explained often enough here on the channel about why I prefer this album over Bonded by Blood. It's like don't throw any tomatoes. I've never been a fan of Paul Bailoff's vocals. All right. It just not for me for whatever reason. The production of the album is a little rough, like you mentioned, Rich, with the great songs on there. But this is the album that just made me a tremendous Exodus fan. And I just so many great songs on here. I think Steve Zetro Souza, whoever he says his name, he sounds awesome on this album. To me, he's the voice of Exodus. Last Act of Defiance is such a great song. I remember moshing in so many mosh pits to Toxic Waltz over those bunch of years. The title track, Cage in Hell, Verbal Razors, you got slashing guitars all over the place. The drums are absolutely brutal. But yet the songs are a little catchy. So Fabulous Disaster by Exodus is my number 7.
I think it does have one stinker on it though.
Well, I mean, we could have done without the lowrider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of it kicks ass, though,
Yeah.
I remember. Go ahead. I remember doing your top Exodus rundown with Mr. Slagle in the room with us that day, and Slagle just about walked off when you told him you didn't like.
He fell out of his chair. Yeah.
I think I don't know. He hasn't been seen on Sea of Tranquility much since. Maybe.
Oh, he has.
Wow.
He has. Oh, yeah. He didn't completely quit.
I still love the Bonded by Blood album, but I like Fabulous Disaster better.
They definitely got more melodic with Zetro.
Yeah.
But those early legendary songs are on the first album. I mean, you can't deny that.
Yeah.
All right, Rich, back to you for back to Steve for number 6.
I'm at number 6 here with I'm going with Megadeth, and originally I was gonna go Rest in Peace, but how do you just pick one if we're gonna do one? I did pick Peace Sells. I thought it was probably one of their great albums. I mean, the first album, I love all the first several albums. I even like the last album they came out with, Dystopia. I think, Dave's still doing some good stuff, and Peace Sells, but who's buying? That's my number 6. Good Morning, Black Friday, Wake Up Dead. What else do you have to say? I mean, it's just one of their great albums, and we said we're doing the best thrash albums. That has to be mentioned today.
I agree.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I probably rather listen to Rust in Peace right now, but but I like them. I love them both. But Rust in Peace, I think, is a masterpiece also.
Yeah.
And the
Of course.
Roar one, of course, is the first album. I mean, that's really kind of like
It's tough to choose from those couple. Yeah, it really is.
You know, it's kind of like the Overkill, Feel the Fire. The first Megadeth is more of that raw and more, you know,
Yep.
old school thrash.
All right, Rich, back to you.
All right. Going with the second one from Slayer, Hell Awaits. One of my favorite album covers as well. Love this album art.
Yeah.
So cool.
Pretty.
They really have some killer album covers, especially the stuff from the 80s. I think that's their best still.
Yes.
So, you know, the title track obviously is a classic. And then Kill Again, Praise of Death, Necrophiliac. But what I like about this album, what I always liked about it, and they kind of lost this later, was stuff like At Dawn They Sleep. Like the kind of the complexity and a little bit of the progginess going on and the melody that's in there. They kind of got rid of that after Seasons. So that's why I appreciate this album a lot more over time.
Great
And South
album.
of Heaven as well, because South of Heaven is very melodic too. So
Yeah.
along with Hell Awaits, I would go with, you know, South of Heaven.
I still remember the first time I heard Hell Awaits. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, it's a scary opening.
That is,
That's a scary opening. Yeah.
It is. I think the metal albums that like scared the shit out of me the most, like when I first heard them, was those first two Merciful Fate albums. Oof.
Yeah.
Early Venom. I was like, woo, wow, listen to
Yeah,
this.
the intro to Number of the Beast, and even Motley Crue before Shout of the Devil, that opening too in the beginning.
Mhm.
I also thought that was pretty creepy at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the only thing, you know, kind of about this album, maybe, you know, Crypts of Eternity and Hardening of the Arteries, they're kind of songs. But like I said, the structure, like for those and At Dawn They Sleep, they lost that later on. And I wish they still did that.
Strong record. Really strong. All right. Rich, if you could hold up Possessed Seven Churches, my number 6 from 1985. So, I almost left this off of this list because, quite frankly, to me, that's like the first death metal album. But yet, at the time, there was no death metal, right? That was just really, really brutal thrash.
Mhm.
And it's notable for its brutality. But I think that album took thrash into death metal realms, and then we would see all these other bands kind of, Death and Morbid Angel come up in its wake. But so many great songs on there: The Pentagram, Exorcist, Holy Hell. You got shredding guitars all over the place, double bass drumming on every single song pretty much, crushing riffs, the gruff deep vocals, not quite death metal growls, but like kind of getting there. It's just an evil record. It's so punishing. And I remember, again, bought that at Rock Fantasy back in the day, listened to that constantly. That and the second album, it's both really good.
Yeah, and if you look at those photos of the band, totally influenced what black metal photography turned into, right?
Yep.
With the blood and the cross.
Yeah, you could definitely see there. There's another one. Yeah, another good one, Steve.
That just came in yesterday. They just got repressed or something. Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool one too. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, those photos totally. That's where the black metal scene got all that stuff from. So you had, like Venom was doing some photos like that. Slayer early on as well. Exciter was doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Especially that one in the corner.
Yeah.
Right. He's getting impaled by the cross.
Yep.
Yeah.
So influential.
Yeah, you can't tell me that like bands like Mayhem were not listening to stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I'm sure they all admit it as well.
Yeah. Bathory and even Impaler had a lot of stuff like photos like that, the crazy stuff,
Yeah. All right, Steve, what are we up to? Number 5. What do we got?
For number 5, I'm going with Creator, Pleasure to Kill, which we've already talked about on the show quite a bit today, but that's my number 5. Creator, Pleasure to Kill, Riot of Violence, Command of the Blade, Under the Guillotine are my 3 tracks that really gravitate still. And I think they still play a couple of those tracks, at times live from that album.
Yeah, they do.
I'm a great big Creator fan. I still go to see them all the time, even though they're more melodic. I love the newer stuff where guys like Scal, one of our guys in Hudson Valley Squares, detests Creator now, but I like all the Creator stuff over the years, and I find them very enjoyable, and they've stood the test of time. They're not as raw as they were back then, and I still enjoy their live performances and everything. But I'm a big Creator guy, so I love the album that came out a couple of years ago too.
I think that's why they became the biggest out of those three, because they incorporated more melody, more, structure, and they had two guitar players. The other bands always didn't. They had two guitar players. They had two guitar players on and off, but Creator always had two of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always appreciated Creator's music all throughout their career. So good band, still kicking ass.
Yep.
All right, Rich, number 5 for you.
All right, going back to Peace Sells again. So second album after Killing was 85. This was 86. I like Killing too. That's rough though. Everybody kind of had a rough start though. Their first album. Classics for what they are, but they were a little rough and unpolished. But this, they really got it. Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, title track, Devil's Island, I love. I wish they would play that more. They don't play it that often. Bad Omen, My Last Words, Good Morning Black Friday. There's not a bad track on this album, but they definitely should be putting in Devil's Island and The Conjuring into the set list. Those are amazing songs, and they need the live treatment again.
Yep.
And probably my favorite cover too. This is probably one of their best
That's
covers,
awesome,
I would say, if not the best.
And what's funny though, and we've mentioned it a couple times today, and we probably could talk a lot more about it. Another album that it's kind of a short album, and it's got a cover song on it, which is easily the worst song on the album. I don't know what it was about. A lot of these thrash bands wanted to throw covers on their albums.
I know. I Ain't Superstitious was the cover.
Yeah. And then they did Anarchy. They did the Sex Pistols song. The 2 albums later.
Yeah, that was okay.
Or 1 hour.
Yeah, that was okay.
Yeah, but still, I would have rather heard another original recording.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Well, Testament did that Aerosmith cover.
They did. That was pretty decent, but again,
that was good. Yeah.
I would have rather heard another original song. That's just me. All right, so my number 5, I'm going to go with Ride the Lightning from 1984. So I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember walking into Rock and Roll Heaven North in Warwick, New York.
Wow.
And the Zazulas are in there playing. I walk in and Fade to Black was playing. And I walk in with a bunch of my buddies, and all I hear is dun, 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 and it was like loud as all hell. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, brand new Metallica album. I'm like, I absolutely need to own this. And I remember bringing this home and just listening to this nonstop for months. And and actually this, and then of course I went and got Kill 'Em All like a week later. And Metallica was actually my favorite band from probably when this album was released till And Justice for All, up until about 1990. And it took a lot to take away the favorite band perch from like Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. For those few years, I was an enormous Metallica fan. I saw them live whenever I could. And this album is another one of those kind of thrash metal blueprint albums, right? I mean, everything you need is right here. Creeping Death by Fire with Fire for Whom the Bell Tolls, title track, Trapped Under Ice, Fade to Black, like I mentioned. You got, Hetfield just coming up with so many cool riffs. You got those vocals, unmistakable vocals of him. You got Cliff Burton's, really cool bass lines. Kirk solos, Lars steady drumming. It's a classic album for a reason.
True.
Back to you, Steve.
All right, you're coming back to me, and I've got my Testament.
There you go.
Not from the album I'm going to talk about, but I'm going with Testament, The Legacy. I love Testament. I think they should be in the top 4. I'm kicking Anthrax out for Testament. I'm not an Anthrax guy, and I never have been for some reason. I appreciate them, but I was never big into them back in the day. I never liked the crooked hats and the skateboard stuff. It wasn't me. So Testament's in my 4, or maybe Overkill or Creator if we want to throw German bands. Nobody ever talks about them when they talk about the 4s. But Legacy, Curse of the Legions of Death, Over the Wall, Raging Waters, still highlights when they play these songs live. Chuck Billy flipping his mic around, and just great stuff. And seeing like Gene Hoglan in the band now and performing some of this stuff, And I mean, I love the new album. Even I think Testament are putting out great records still between this
Yep.
one and all the way from the formation of Damnation back to now. They've been putting out solid records.
Yep.
And Testament deserves a lot more respect, I think, in the circles than they get sometimes.
I absolutely agree 100%.
Did you guys get to see?
Go ahead.
Did you guys get to see the tour that they did a few years ago when they played the first two albums in their entirety?
I don't know if I did. I think that was in Long Island by us. I don't think I made it to that.
I got to see it in Jersey. It was awesome.
That must have been.
I saw them a bunch of times on Slayer's last tour when they were like the first band coming out there. And that next leg, Napalm Death took over for them. No, Napalm Death was with them too. Yeah, it was. Well, Behemoth was the first band, and then it was Testament, or back and forth. But always loved Testament. Saw them at the Chance a bunch of times. I think I've seen just about every tour.
I would say, arguably, that Testament has the strongest catalog start to finish of any band that we're talking about today, as far as consistency throughout the whole catalog.
Yeah.
And Overkill, I would say.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yep. We're really no slip ups along the way.
Ones either, but yeah, I agree with you. You might have to, and Destruction's pretty much cut the form too. They haven't done anything really bad, and that's pretty much what you expect every time Destruction drops a record out too. But of course, not the notoriety in the States is like a Testament.
True. Yep.
Cool. All right, Rich, what do you got? Number 4.
Going with Anthrax, Spreading the Disease.
Disease.
Another one of my favorite covers too. Killer. Always love this artwork. So this is before, like Steve was saying about the skateboarder stuff. This is before that.
True. It is true. The first album too is very good. Someone told me to mention that one.
The skateboard stuff and everything came around among and right after it for State of Euphoria, especially State of Euphoria. Yeah. So this is before they got a little too playful and silly, Yeah. But this has this front to back is all great songs and a perfect balance between thrash and melody. And Joey Belladonna is a great singer. So AIR is a killer opener. I wish they would play that more often. They do once in a while, but they need to do it more. Lone Justice is great, got a nice melody and a hook to it. Madhouse is a classic that they still play. What else? Aftershock, Gung Ho are full blown, barn burners as they call them. And I love Armed and Dangerous too. How it starts off mellow and then it builds and then you get into the riffs and the hook. It's so good. Same thing with Medusa. This is, perfect, I think, from beginning to end.
Yeah, that's a good album. I guess maybe I overlooked it because of I kind of dropped with Anthrax years ago. That's a great album. I sold tons of that when it came out in the shop. Played a lot.
I go back to this all the time. And I love Among the Living too. That's another great album too. But this
Among
is what
I
got into. Yeah. This is the album that I listened to first, that I got into them. And then I went backwards and got Fistful of Metal after this. So yeah, it's a great. I don't know why people don't like that cover. I think it's a great cover.
it's the early metal cover.
Yep.
All right, my number 4. We've talked about how great Overkill still is, and they always were, and I love this band. Taking Over is my number 4. They've got a couple albums that could rank for me, but I think I always go back to the ones that I listen to the most, and I just always love this album. Still my favorite of theirs to this day. So many great thrash anthems on here. Wrecking Crew, Deny the Cross, Power Surge, Electro Violence, In Union We Stand, Overkill 2. I mean, it's just, I think Blitz, really started to come into his own on this album. You got killer Bobby Gustafson guitars all over the place on here. It's just a kick-ass album, and it's just a real anthemic, heavy, fast album, and I love it. And I still think these songs sound as fresh today as they did back in 1987, which seems like a million years ago. But
sure it does.
How you feel about that album cover?
Well, yeah, the album cover kind of sucks, but they would go on to have a lot of really cool album covers. This is not one of them. But whatever, album cover notwithstanding, the album kicks ass. And in fact, produced by Alex Perialis, who I think was the thrash guy in that era. He was producing like so many of these thrash bands, and that was that this, you know, like today you have the Andy Sneap sound. Back then you had the Alex Perialis sound, right? And just really crisp guitars and just big and crunchy, and you know, so indicative of a lot of bands of that era.
He's actually on my next selection too when we get to it.
Aha, cool. Steve, what do you got? Number 3.
All right. I'm going with everybody yell at home, Slayer. See what happened when Slayer broke up? The world went to shit. We've been talking about that all this year. Pandemics, riots, everything. Slayer breaks up, and I guess they took a good time to stop touring. They wouldn't be able to. I'm going with Show No Mercy, which was I think it was my number 1 pick when we went to Slayer.
It was
list earlier this year, but I might actually change it around with something else today. But Show No Mercy is my number 3 with Die by the Sword, Black Magic, Fight Till Death. It's such a great album, and it's such a heavy album. What else can I say? Slayer, Show No Mercy, my number 3.
Yep, great album. Great album.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Rich, back to you.
All right, so going with another Alex album, Testament to New Order. So I like the first one too. The Legacy's great, but this one, it's got more melody. It's got more variety in the arrangements. I love the way before Eerie Inhabitants kicks in, you have that instrumental, right? And then the album closes with Musical Death, a Dirge, which is another instrumental. And then you have like Trial by Fire and Day of Reckoning, which I always liked. And they did that when they did the first 2 albums in their entirety. And then you have the Thrash anthem, of course, Into the Pit. And the title track is so killer. I mean, the whole album is killer. It's great. Even the cover of the Aerosmith song is fine. Doesn't bother me. Nobody's fault. It's okay.
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah, it's good. It's one of the better covers from a thrash band that does a cover song. We were talking about, you know. But yeah, front to back, I think this is a perfect album. It shows variety. It's still thrashy. It's got more melody to it. I think it's a great next step after the first one.
I love that album. Like I said, how do you just pick one when we're doing this stuff? It's just crazy, you know. Like with Testament, that's such a great album. I agree.
Oh, two other classics are on this too. You got Into the Pit, and then you got Disciples of the Watch and The Preacher. They're always playing those songs.
Maybe I should switch from Legacy to that, but I guess we talked about the Legacy, so we're giving everybody a little love this morning.
Yeah, the first two albums.
You taught me out of it, I think, maybe.
I will say, because Testament is my number 3 as well. I will say I spent more time putting together this list, deciding whether I'm going to pick the Legacy or the New Order. I mean, it just, even as of this morning, like right before we went on, I was still trying to figure out which one. I ultimately went with the Legacy. All right. But it could change at any time because I love them both basically equally. But just, and Trial by Fire, man, what a great song. I was just cranking that a little while ago. You know, both albums are absolutely classic, but you know, the first album, you got the great Alex is producing that one as well. You got Over the Wall, you got The Haunting, Burnt Offering, such a killer song, Raging Waters, Curse of the Legion of Death. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. You know, First Strike, Still Deadly. There's not a bad song in the bunch. You could arguably say you put those 2 albums together, and that's like the greatest double album in heavy metal history, right? Chuck Billy just rules on this album and all the albums, quite frankly. Skolnick, Shredding Up a Storm. Eric Peterson's riffs are just monstrous. It's a great debut. And you could arguably say those, you know, first 3 Testament albums are reason that they should have been also included in the top thrash album, you know, ranking. Instead of the top 4, it should have been the top 5, and they should be right up there. So yeah, the Legacy by Testament or the second one, either one. They're both great.
Can't go wrong, right? Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong.
It's a great discussion. We could talk about it all day.
I'm telling you.
So are you back to me now?
I'm back to you. Number 2. Back
2.
to you for number 2.
All right. So I'm going Metallica Killing All for number 2. I loved Metallica like you did back then. I got to see this tour a couple times in Middletown and in Port Jervis. And Metallica was a hungry metal band traveling around with a van with a little trailer behind it, and got up and just blew everybody's minds and I mean, what a classic album. How do you go wrong with Hit the Lights to start off? And you got the Whiplash. And I remember buying it I bought this at Record City, bought this record kind of sight unseen. Back in the day when you just pick up a record and look at the cover, it's like, oh, this looks heavy. And I brought it home and I was listening to Motor Breath and it totally blew my mind. It's like how heavy and how fast that song was.
Yeah.
I did, it's just, that's my number 2. How do I leave it? I couldn't leave Kill 'Em All off my list. So it's my second dip into Metallica in the top thrash albums of all time.
Yeah. And Kirk Hammett's finest moment on a Metallica album, in my opinion. That's like when because a lot of people shit on Kirk Hammett for his solos and whatever. But I think his solos on that first Metallica album are great. Most people say they're great because they were already pre-written by Dave Mustaine and he's just following the blueprint, whatever. But I mean, there's so many classic songs on that first album.
I think he started, getting, I don't know, less, I don't know what it is. I think it was after the 80s when he started misstepping with his playing. I think 80s he was great. He was fine, even up to the Black Album. I think it was after that when they shit the bed with Load and, Load and Reload, and Saint Anger was, total crapper. So
there's kind of like a go for the jugular feel on that first album, and a lot of the early albums. But I just think got really safe, over since the 90s. And I mean, he's still he's a fine player, but whatever. That's a good choice, Steve. I can't deny that at all.
Thank you.
All right, so my number 2, you stole my choice for number 2.
Did I?
So I was going to go with Taking Over because I love it so much, still do. So I'm going to go with my second favorite, this one, The Years of Decay.
Yeah, there you go.
For my number 2. I mean, I could switch out the 2 of these albums because they're both perfect for their own reasons. So since you picked,
and that is a great album cover. Unlike
good, so good. What a great statement, and it doesn't have too much to it. It's just right to the point.
Yep. It's
not too much going on. So I think this has one of their best openers, and they rarely ever play it. Time to Kill. Love that. Elimination was the hit off of that one. That did really well for them. I Hate Nothing to Die For is cool. Skull Crusher is your slow one. And I really like side 2. I might like side 2 actually better than side 1. Birth Attention, Who Tends the Fire, The Years of Decay, and then the closer is Evil Never Dies. What a great ripping, face ripping, the fourth part to the Overkill story. It's just not called Overkill, it's called Evil Never Dies. Yeah, this is perfect, just like I think Taking Over.
And how slow and heavy is Skull Crusher?
Oh,
yeah, very slow, kind of plodding. It's like doom metal.
I was gonna say it's like Black Sabbath, right? And Pantera would go and take that kind of framework and do lots of songs like that throughout the day.
But Who Tends the Fire and Years of Decay also have their slow moments.
Yeah.
Mellow and slow, but then it kicks in and then it punches you and it gets a little thrashy too. That's why I love this album a lot too. It's got a little more dynamics than what they did before this.
Yeah.
Very cool. But
I love that combination of songs, the Who Tends the Fire going into the Years of Decay. I thought that was just so I'd call them songs more epic than they're thrash, but they're like epic.
Yeah.
Like Bobby with the Years of Decay talking about the road. It's like the road song. And I remember him going back to L'Amour's and he was like singing that on stage and he was like crying, I think, at the same time. It's very epic.
Yeah, great album.
Now we love Overkill. I can't stress it enough. Right?
Yeah, they're one of the best. One of the, if they're not, they're not part of the big 4, but like you were saying, Overkill, Testament, and Exodus should be shoehorned in there somehow as part of, the big 4 plus 3 equals the 7. I don't know, do something.
I agree.
If I was able to put that together, I would have made it the big 7 and made it into like an Ozfest and just toured around the States, or maybe the big 8. Let's throw Creator on it too. I'll have Creator, I'll have Testament, or I'll have Overkill, and throw in another one.
let Destruction play in that too. Yeah,
Destruction or DRI
Well,
or something, you know, throw one on early.
I like
Would
that.
Would have been great.
I'd go see that.
Yeah.
All right, so my number two. So Steve was talking before his Slayer pick was Show No Mercy. So when Steve and I did the show with Brian Slagle and Elliot Fulham, God, months ago, at the beginning of this pandemic nonsense, Steve and I both picked Show No Mercy as our favorite Slayer album. And but for this purpose, for the purposes of this show, although Show No Mercy is still my favorite Slayer album, I think their best pure thrash album is Rain and Blood. And that's what I ultimately went with here. Like I said, it's my number two favorite Slayer album, but it's my favorite thrash album by them. And it's one of the best that this genre has ever seen. It's just, I remember hearing this album for the first time. It's 29 minutes of just absolute aggression and brutality. Angel of Death, Jesus Saves, Piece by Piece, Altar of Sacrifice, and then one of my favorite kind of closing album 1-2 punches, Postmortem and Raining Blood. It doesn't get much better than that. It's just, it's less than a half hour of unrelenting savagery. And this was probably one of the most brutal major label releases of all time at the time anyway. So
what's the song before the last two? Is that Epidemic?
That is Epidemic.
Yeah, I really like that one. I like the way it sets into that groove.
Yep. Reborn is great too. Criminally Insane. I mean, the whole album is great. It's just, it's still amazing when you go back and listen to this, how it's like, it's not even a half hour long. It's crazy, right? But it didn't need to be any longer. It's just crazy stuff. So,
and it's amazing how the sound and the production was stepped up from Hell Awaits up to that.
Oh man, I mean, Rick Rubin did such a dynamite job on that album.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, the number ones. Steve, what do you got?
It's the 29-minute thrash metal Slayer masterpiece, and it's my number one album on the list, Slayer, Rain and Blood. So don't go too far with that prop. And going into seeing them live over the years, I remember Teddy Etall. I don't know if you know Teddy. He does a lot of the bookings up in the Albany area. Put together that Aggressive Music Fest for a few years at the Civic Center in Glens Falls. And he would do a lot of the offshoot days of Ozfest. And they had Slayer headlining the one day, doing the whole Rain and Blood. At that time, when they did that Ozfest tour in the 2000s, they were doing that Rain and Blood entirety. They just go out and play that and blister through it. My wife and I had gone, and we had seats on the side of this little hockey arena, if anybody's ever been to Glens Falls. And I just sat on the side of the stage, and I was watching Lombardo for that 29 minutes. I mean, long with, but just watching him. My wife and I were just watching him on the drums for that whole thing. That's when they dropped the blood, if you remember the whole thing. They were doing Ozfest that year doing that. And it's such a great album. And man, I miss Slayer. I miss shows. And I saw them so many times. I think Pete would chime in now. How many times did I see Slayer on their final tour? I didn't see the one at the Garden with Ministry and those bands, but I saw the rest of those tours. Like if they played PNC, I went. If they played Jones Beach, I went. If they played Scranton, I went. So I went a bunch of times.
I lost count. I mean, I would talk to Steve like once a week over the course of like a month. And it's like, what'd you do last week? I saw Slayer 3 times. I'm like, didn't you see him 2 times the week before? Yep. It's like, doesn't matter. Like,
it was such a good lineup because you had Anthrax, you had, Lamb of God, which I've seen a million times, but you had Testament. Sometimes you had Behemoth. Sometimes you had Napalm Death. It was just a really good show. And it was, and I mean, you know what? Looking back now, I don't regret going to see all these shows. You know, Chris Allos, the king of Slayer, though. How many times has he saw Slayer? One of the guys from our Monday night show, Chris, and regular on CHN. Like he'll fly to like Vancouver to see him or something, you know. Like
that's a good choice for number one. You can't argue that one.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, what's your number one, Rich?
All right. Well, I think everybody knows what's going to be the number one, right? I haven't mentioned them yet. Unless I go totally left field. I mean, I'm wearing a Slaughter shirt, right?
Yeah.
I could be the wild card today. I could be very unpredictable.
Yep. That's right.
But I'm going to go with Metallica, the one that you guys didn't pick. So, of course, every thrash list has to have the first 3, right? So this is obviously the I don't know. I find it very complimentary to Ride the Lightning.
Yeah,
These two really work together.
they go together.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. Even though Ride the Lightning is a little bit maybe rougher around the edges, slightly, maybe the songs, but it's still, it has that, I don't know. There's a familiarity between the two of them because you have the two instrumentals. You got Orion on the puppets, and you got Call of Cthulhu, which closes Ride the Lightning. But then you have the opener Battery and then Fight Fire with Fire on Lightning, which are brutal. But Puppets is cool because you got Battery opening and then you got Damage Incorporated closing it, which is great. And then Disposable Heroes kicks off side 2, which is excellent. I love the changes in that song. And then Puppets is your epic, kind of like the title track for Ride the Lightning. So yeah, there's some familiarity between the two of them. The thing that should not be is kind of like their For Whom the Bell Tolls, sort of the mid pace, you know. So yeah, this is a perfect album. This shows their variety, their use of melody. It's still thrashy. It's got all their qualities. I think this is they still haven't topped this album. I don't think they ever will.
I listened to that a ton.
Yeah, who didn't?
Yeah, it's incredible. These two, the two of them, you know, they're perfect. Perfect albums.
So my number one, after much debate here,
Drum roll.
I had to go with this. I love this album.
Wow, all three of us picked the same album.
Yep, I really, I mean, I love a lot of, you know, and Rust in Peace was up there too for me. But ultimately I went with the one that just has just given me the little bit more enjoyment throughout my life. And I think just Mustaine and company just absolutely crushed it here. It's very accessible in spots, but it's still really thrashy. There's, you know, shredding guitars all over the place, a lot of really heavy stuff. You know, Wake Up Dead is my all-time favorite Megadeth song. It's just a killer track, a great album opener. The Conjuring is amazing. The title track, of course, you know, Devil's Island, Good Morning, Black Friday. I mean, how ripping is Black Friday, right? Bad Omen, My Last Words. I mean, it's just classic from top to bottom. And yeah, all right, you could take off the cover tune for me, but whatever. I think Chris Poland's lead guitar work and Mustaine's is just absolutely incredible on here. You know, Gar Samuelson's drumming. It's just a face melting album that just never gets old. I still love to listen to it, and that is my number one thrash album. So now, Steve, rattle off a couple honorable mentions. We'll go around and each throw out some stuff that didn't make our list.
Yeah, cool. I got a couple. This one was in my top 10. It was Sodom, Persecution Mania. I didn't make the top 10 in the end. I guess you want to consider this a thrash band at times. Voivod with Killing Technology, which might be, that's one of my favorite albums of all time. Sepultura, Beneath the Remains. Of course, Sepultura toured here in Middletown on that album. It was quite a memorable time.
You took one of my selections.
Well, hey, we can both have them. You know, shows we both have good taste. We've connected a couple times on today's show already. Nuclear Assault, early stuff from then. I guess I'll mention Game Over, but all the early Nuclear Assault, very thrashy stuff and very classic. Another band maybe not remembered as much because they didn't have as long of a shelf life. I mean, they've come back and forth a couple times. The great DRI with Thrash Zone. It was thought more of a punk band, but it's like dealing with it in Thrash Zone. I also want to mention a newer thrash metal band that blew my mind when I saw them a couple of years ago, and poor Riley, who passed away this year, Riley Gale, Power Trip, Nightmare Logic. Those two albums came out in the last few years, and man, I tell you, I got to see them, and he commanded that stage. I thought they were a great band, Power Trip. And even when we're at work here in the store and you got a bunch of boxes dropped off and you're laying kind of low, put Power Trip on the LP, spin it around, and you're like working and tearing stuff apart. So much energy in that band. And I guess one of the newer bands, just to mention, we're doing a thrash metal show, is Warbringer. Put out a great album this year too. And there are some newer thrash bands, you know, keeping the power alive, but losing Riley is a big loss to the metal scene.
I agree.
I don't know if it ever came out, whatever happened to him. I don't really know. was no statement of what really happened to Riley, was there?
No, not that I heard. Not that I
Very
heard.
young guy. What was he, in his
I
30s?
don't know.
Early 30s, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Rich, you got a couple honorables?
Okay. Yeah. Well, he was talking about newer bands, so I'll throw in a couple. So Havoc, I thought was great. Time Is Up. I really love that album.
Yes, yes.
Suicidal Angels is another great band. They're kind of like a mix of Slayer meets Creator. I thought they're great. And Evile, they're very Metallica-ish. I haven't heard much from Evile lately, though. Hopefully they're putting out some new music. But those guys were great from the newer crop. And then from the classics, I got to go with the first Annihilator, Alice in Hell. Too bad they were late to the game, because I think if they put this out and Never Never Land and Set the World on Fire earlier, they would have been part of that conversation with the big 7, 8, 9, 10, however you want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
2 or
But-
3 years is a long time back then, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this came out in what, 88, 89 maybe?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right at the end of the decade.
Somewhere around there. So they were a little late, unfortunately. So, and they still put out great music to this day. Jeff Waters still runs the band. He knows the main man, and they still put out great music. So them, First Violence, Eternal Nightmare,
Oh, thank God you
That
mentioned
album
that.
cover.
Thank God you mentioned that.
killer album cover, one of my favorites as well. And another band that probably people don't really remember or know is Atrophy. I thought they were very cool. This one, and I can't think of the title of the second one.
Hmm.
Does anybody know the title of the second one? It slipped my mind right now.
You're
But I like the
stumping
second
me.
one. What is it?
You stumped me today. You stumped me.
Yeah, I can't think of the title right now, but their first two albums are very cool too. This is when you get into Violence and Atrophy, that's where the singing was a little more like they were speaking to you instead of singing. The bands before them, everybody was singers, right?
Yeah.
Blitz, Chuck Billy, Hetfield, Belladonna, everyone was singers. These guys, they were more like speaking to you, right? Instead of the singing quality. But yeah, I'll go with those three because you mentioned already Sepultura, and those other three for the newer bands: Havoc, Evile, and Suicidal Angels.
So none of us mentioned Forbidden or Sacrifice today.
Oh my God. I think people are going to boo us. They're going to get plenty of bad comments because Forbidden was one of my bands. I used to come to the store wearing a Rock Fantasy shirt. I forgot about Forbidden. I think it's senile pandemic. I think it's a term now. Maybe it's a symptom of COVID. Maybe I had it early on. I don't know. But Forbidden, oh my God, Twisted and Forum and Forbidden Evil. Yeah. And Hyrax people were mentioning too. I put up a little post on my personal Facebook yesterday saying how I was doing a video show. And I think that's the biggest threat I've ever had on a post ever. There's still people posting this morning. It was
like 200 responses, right? It's like,
well, pick this one.
Pete, we got the same one when we were doing our early 80s American metal equivalent to new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
And we forgot to mention our beloved, I'm going to say it now because everybody's going to yell at us if we don't, Sabotage, who we both love. And who was the other band we missed? Riot. We didn't miss them. We know they're part of the conversation, obviously.
Yeah.
We were trying to pick other bands that people maybe weren't thinking of. You remember?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know who the other band is too? Well, I might as well throw them in there. Is Dio, the first two Dio albums for that American wave of metal that was coming out.
True. Yep. True. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I almost put the first Metal Church album in this list because that first album is pretty thrashy. More so than anything else they ever did.
I agree.
I ultimately decided not to because we talked about them on that previous episode. But another great album that didn't make my list, but probably would have been my number 11 is there you go, First Metal Church. How about the first Heathen, Breaking the Silence? That's a killer album.
Good choice.
Really killer album. I had Spreading the Disease and Among the Living in my honorable mentions. I had Alice in Hell by Annihilator, Destruction, Eternal Devastation. Steve, I was right there with you with Voivod, Killing Technology. That's a thrash album. Any of those other Testament albums, Show No Mercy, Slayer, Master of Puppets, Rust in Peace by Megadeth. So, I mean, that was my honorable mention list right there. I think we covered like a lot of the really mandatory ones.
The mandatory ones, definitely. And I got to throw in one more great cover. Let's see if anybody remembers this band.
Wow. Oh, Lads Rock.
Lads Rock. Holy cow.
It's a crazy
What
cover.
a great cover that is, right?
Yeah. Were they on Metal Blade? Was that a Metal Blade release?
I think it was.
Or was that
Let's
Combat?
see. Good question. I'm gonna put on the reading glasses for this one here. Because the type is really small on this one.
It's a great album cover. I kind of forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great album cover. I can't see the record label right now. That's really, really small.
Yeah.
This had their hit off of this was Fire in the Hole.
God, I don't think I
Great
ever
cover.
owned any Laz Rocket albums.
Yeah, this was a
Sure, I
very
sold
one
some,
of my
but I
favorites.
don't know. I've never had that in my collection.
No,
I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
it's
a better
really-
look at the cover there. Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. Yep.
pretty interesting.
Cool. So much
Yeah,
good
I got
stuff.
a pretty good thrash collection here.
So much good stuff. And there's so many other like American bands that with who they call like the new wave of American heavy metal that could be considered thrash bands, right?
There's Forbidden.
There it is.
There's a Forbidden right there.
Twisted into Form, Killer.
What were you saying
Anybody else
about
you guys
that,
want to
Pete?
throw?
With
Nice.
the-
Anybody else you want to throw at me?
Pete, you were
You know
saying
who,
about
who could
the
be, who could be part of this conversation too? Obviously.
Oh, Raven. Yeah.
Raven.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Raven, Anvil could be part of this conversation as well. Exciter could be part of this conversation as well.
Oh yeah. That was another one I was going to say. My honorable mention: Exciter, Violence, and Force.
Yeah.
But Steve mentioned, Warbringer, and there's so many great like younger American bands.
One more, so I don't get yelled at because I missed Sabotage and Riot last time. Of course, Doomsday.
Oh yeah, Flotsam and Jetsam. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. No Place for Disgrace, and this one, amazing.
We're trying to cover all the bases so we don't get yelled at.
Right? Yeah, we
Like
learned
when
from
we did the Opeth show and I forgot Demon of the Fall.
I remember that.
Yeah, we got killed for our Sabotage and Riot.
It certainly happens. We're only human, everyone out there. We're only human, and I'm old, so I'm a senior now. I'm 60. So my brain doesn't work as good as it did back in the 30s when I was in my 30s, 40s.
And is Lamb of God thrash?
I thought it was groove metal, but I guess
I would
it's
say
got
groove metal.
thrashy elements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to say, right?
I would say they're part of that. They're part of the Pantera Machine Head 90s wave of I don't know, groove metal if you want to call it, or extreme metal maybe in America.
I had so many people suggest Pantera, and I said, well, they're not a thrash metal band. Like they were the groove metal.
I think Cowboys though is a thrash album.
Okay, so yeah. I mean, it's everything's got a gray area when you get in between some of this stuff, anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on today, Pete. I really, it was fun to get up and do this.
That's
10 in the morning. I tried to get Chris on, but man, 10 a.m. I'm like, dude, I get up at 5 a.m. now. Anyhow, I go to sleep at like 9:30. I'm up at 5 every day during the pandemic. I don't know. I'm definitely old man now.
It's hard to get Chris Allo to kind of resurface until after 12. It really,
That's what he said. Yeah, he said he's a night owl.
yeah, it's understandable. So,
But thanks for having me on. If you guys want to check out my website, rockfantasy.com, my store, it's Christmas season. We're open here if you're in the Hudson Valley every day, 12 to 7. And drop in and check us out if you can, please.
sounds
Stay
good.
safe, everyone.
And Rich, you want to give a couple links before we go?
Sure. Metalasylum.net, Brave Words, and the Metal Hall of Fame, which I write for all three of them.
Awesome. So thanks everybody for watching, and feel free to list your favorite thrash albums of all time in the comments below. It'll be interesting to see what everybody comes up with. I want to thank Steve and Rich for coming on and doing this with me. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So we'll see you later on this weekend with more stuff. And of course, don't miss Hudson Valley Squares on Monday night, guest starring Mr. Keeler, as well as a whole cast of other people coming up. We got a great show coming up this Monday night. It's game show night, so do not miss it. And we'll see you real soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.